This is a short talk on the basic problem of why there are so many languages in the world. According to Wikipedia, in 2007, there were 6,912 living human languages in the world. 6,900, almost 7,000. In 1990s, in 2007, there are 192 states, that is countries, nation states, plus Vatican City. So there are many, many more languages than there are countries. And we can't just go around saying, well, there are so many languages because there are so many countries or so many cultures. Perhaps, anyway. We have to accept that most countries in the world are multilingual and most people speak 2 or 3 or 4 varieties, often different languages. So it's not a question of saying there are so many languages because everybody has the right to their language. People in the world, outside of English-speaking countries, are using many languages and many varieties within languages. It's not a question of having your one language or your country having its one language. We know that in Europe, if we go around Europe and look at the countries where there is only one language that is national and embodies the state and has official status, there are only a few. Iceland, because it's small, Portugal, which is also relatively small, Poland might pass, but the rest of the countries in Western Europe at least all have other languages other than what we think is the main one, are operating within their territory, and I invite you to go and test that. Now, why so many? Hence the problem, why so many? What's the reason for it? Now, I've asked people in this course to answer what seemed to be a very simple question, saying, should there be native varieties of English? Should there be a variety of English standardized in India, for example, or in Nigeria, or in Kenya, or whatever? And the answers to that were very interesting. Some people fall into the category of language rights, linguistic diversity. Everybody has the right to express themselves in their language or a language from their place. And that's fine, that's not a wrong answer. The other side is people who argue that a language is useful for communicating over a wide area with many people, for spreading out information and being understood clearly. These are the people who argued for standardized international English, and I think they're right too. And I think that these two right answers can help us with understanding why there are so many languages. Here's the way I'm thinking. There are these two forces at work in the choice of one variety or another. One is the idea that the use of a language with standards that are agreed on by many people is a positive thing, and that for that kind of use, for the conveying of information, the more people agree on the standards, the better. The more standard the language, the more international, the better. This would be the logic of technology, any communications technology like fax machines, mobile phones. The more people have them, the better, the more useful they are. This would obviously be the logic of international English. Its use as a lingua franca, its use for conveying scientific information would be also the logic of international Latin prior to that. However, there's also the force whereby a language expresses an identity. It expresses your place in the world. It enables us to say things to some people so as not to be understood by other people, to include some people and exclude others. And this is how we form social networks. This is how we form groups. This is the aim of a lot of linguistic creativity. Think of yourselves in school when you're 12, 13, 14 in your little groups, and you're trying to be cool and a member of this group or that group. And what you do, you invent words, you invent terms, you invent lots of names for each other and names for teachers, etc. Yes, I was there too once. And the use of language there is very much to form and express and maintain identity. And that's a useful thing too, because these people with whom you form those close relations, are the ones who are going to help you. It's not that you speak English to 10 million, 20 million, 500 million people, that all those people are going to help you. But if you're speaking a local variety of Western Catalan or Eastern Catalan, the variety of your village, you're forming bonds, social bonds, that are eminently useful in social life. So there are these two forces, and I think we could understand that most of what happens with language is operating between those two. The difference between the forces is clear in basic social linguistics, in the distinction between an official language in many countries, the language of laws, the language of parliamentary debate, the language of that people have to understand in order to participate in civil society. That official function of language is distinguished from national languages, languages that express identity and often national identity. Classic example is Paraguay, where you have Spanish as an official language, but the national language is Guarani, which expresses the identity. Languages can be used for official purposes, and that's fine, and standardization is good and necessary, and they are also used for the identity purposes, be it at the level of the nation with national languages, or for the expression of regional identity, group identity, the identity of a city or a town or a social class, even a profession in some cases. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. There is the drive towards having one international language, which may be English or some other language, but it must be standardized because its function is precisely for that, for conveying information that's going to be understood. And the diversity comes from the identity function of language, which is going to be greatest in those places where there is bad communication geographically. Zaire, Congo, the jungles, the highlands of New Guinea, wherever it's difficult to have communication over a wide area, the first function of language is going to be weakened, and the diversity function is going to be strengthened. The identity function is going to be strengthened. That's why we find many, many languages in places in the world where communications are poor. And that's why I think we find parts of the world where communications, international communications, are very good and very sophisticated, where we have the tendency towards just one international language at the moment. It may be others in the future. I've written on languages in Europe, and I've criticized the policy in Europe, the idea that there should be many, many, many languages used officially in all the laws and parliamentary debates. I think my position is misunderstood. I do argue that we need standardized languages, probably just English, but one or two, French, German, what's the difference? They're all big, dominant, colonial, imperialistic languages. We need them for official purposes, for civil society, for information that must be understood by everyone. And on the other side, we need all those minor languages and regional languages and the varieties that express the identity that is close to people's lives, both at the same time. Why are there so many languages? Because there is more than information in the world.